what happened today, of course. You know, we think California has been on a mission to make the bail system fair in California, and this was not fair. I mean, there is rules that are supposed to apply to everybody equally. There is specific alternatives that the court is supposed to look at to allow someone to remain out of custody, have the presumption of innocence, and fight their case. You know, it's very difficult to fight a case and meet with your defense counsel when you're in custody. So we're disappointed about that, and what we're going to do about it is we're going to go to the appellate court. That's where there's a lot of action right now on the bail system in the appellate court, and we are confident that if an appellate court reviews all of the record, there's a lot of the record that you guys don't have as the media because it's not appropriate in the public domain, considering the nature of the case. Well, the appellate court's going to get to see it, and we are confident when the appellate court sees all the evidence that we have that they will remand the case back for appropriate bail setting.
To keep in mind, a bail hearing is a one-sided event, and it was extraordinarily one-sided for this bail hearing. None of the defense evidence was allowed to be heard. None of the defense witnesses were allowed to take the stand. When you have a situation like this with a concept under a bail hearing that all of the evidence and all of the allegations are to be presumed true by the judge, it's extraordinarily difficult to get fairness. That's why we have appellate courts. I've won in the appellate court this issue before, and I intend to win this issue for what happened today. We know, because we have done internal investigation, that we 1,000% know that our theory and our belief is true. We have the witnesses, we have the evidence. We lodged it with the court after the hearing because that's when the court would accept it. So you think to yourself whether this was a completely balanced process when one side is allowed to call everything and the other side's allowed to call nothing, and I'll let you draw your own conclusions. But this is one round in what's going to be a long fight, and we are going to fight because we know what the truth is, and we're going to prove it.
What exactly are you, so why wouldn't you go to the appellate court after this case is wrapped up? Why go now?
Because we don't have the time to go after it's wrapped up. We want our client out of custody. We want him to be treated fairly. It's hard for me to understand how there can be somebody with 600 plus alleged victims and they get bail, and our client with one piece of evidence that was described or given information about, one piece out of all of this tip of the iceberg, one piece of evidence in which the expert himself said that he could not tell you whether the person in the video was an adult or a minor. And that is so flimsy, it's just preposterous, the ruling that we are going to be challenging with the appellate court.
Now, remember also that that same investigative officer couldn't tell you the age of the Jane Doe that he interviewed that supposedly identified the photo. That investigator says, I'm not really sure how old she is. I think she's over 18 now. So he has a person sitting right next to him. He can't guess the person's age, and we're supposed to trust on an image that we're not allowed to see, where someone's wearing a mask allegedly, on what that person's age is. It wasn't a fair process because the bail system's structurally flawed in California. And it's been flawed for a long time, and that's why there's a lot of efforts to try to correct it. And you know, and then how does that get corrected? Either through the legislature, who has made a lot of attempts to do it, or through the courts.
And after years that they've had, we've had the case for a little over a month. They've had years. And what was the best piece of evidence that they were able to present that directly shows anything is a piece of evidence that may or may not be authentic. As I stated, there is case law that states that you have to have an expert verify. Why? And this is from the case itself. Digital evidence is easy to fake. It's in the case itself. No expert testified to the authenticity of any of the alleged documents that they talked about today. And the one document, they're not even sure that that person is an adult or a minor, testified by their expert, and they can't even authenticate that it was actually real. Look, we all know movie magic. We all know what cameras can do. And that case was decided a decade ago with the principle that if you're going to enter in evidence of that nature, it must be authenticated by an expert. And that was a decade ago. Imagine where technology is today compared to where it was then. We're tired of having them hide information from us. We're tired of us having to go file motions to be treated fairly to get the documents. And even without that, we have already established what I've said in the beginning, and I lodged those reports with the court today. This is the beginning. This is certainly not the end, and we're coming back.
So that expert did say that he believed the person with the mask was 15 or 16.
Based on what? He said that he believed that based on somebody else's third-party identification. And let's look at this logically. The person's wearing a mask. So for it to have been verified by, I believe what they said, Jane Doe number 4, there's only one way to verify that. And maybe people have seen the movie Porky's or not that are in this room, but it would take the verification of knowing somebody's genitalia. So if this independent person that is supposed to be Jane Doe number 4 is able to identify the independent genitalia, well,
So, I mean, we're going to go to the appellate court. That's where we're going. We'll take a couple more quick questions, and I think we covered it.
Based on your experience, do you get a feeling that maybe Oaxaca is getting in the future some type of deal?
You know, that's always, when you have a really weak case, you quite often try to look for creative ways of getting new witnesses. So I wouldn't be surprised. We've heard all kinds of rumors out there in our investigation, from people being promised green cards to people being threatened with prosecution. So we wouldn't be surprised if any of that. And by the way, if there is any witness out there that has been threatened by the Attorney General or has been offered, green card or anything for their evidence, come and tell us, please. We will guarantee you, we will get the court to support you in any manner necessary to make sure that you cannot be threatened, to have your immigration status affected, or anything in that regard. We've heard too many reports of that in this case. So if it's out there, we ask that you come to the defense. We're on the web. You can look up Rosenfeld or Mr. Sawyer. We have our emails there available. Send us information. We promise you we will go to court and protect you. You will not be threatened with face prosecution or to be deported if you don't say what the Attorney General wants you to say.
Can you explain for those who weren't there today what the judge decided regarding bail?
The judge decided that it was our client is being held with no bail at this time.
Okay.
And then the other co-defendant's bail that was Ms. Ocampo remained the same.
And that's $25 million.
25 million, which is again absurd. If anybody's looking at bail reform, what does $25 million mean to someone who makes $13,000 a year? It means they will never, ever get out on bail. And we have just spent the last 3 or 4 years in the legislature saying that courts can't do that. If you're setting bail, it's based on the person's ability to pay. It's based on their, if you don't think that it doesn't matter what the bail amount is, you don't want them out, then you do no bail. But then the appellate review standards are tougher. We're allowed to go to the appellate court. So it was very illogical that bail could be set at $25 million on someone that makes $13,000 a year. It's essentially no bail.
that's all we have for right now.
A
So.
very basic question. Can you explain how exactly you're appealing this?
Well,
Which court?
we're going to say very briefly because, but basically there's a lot of issues. For example, the not being allowed to introduce evidence of what we think occurred is one of the reasons. Not being able to present evidence that goes against the witnesses that the Attorney General had, we think is appealable. That the fact that they didn't adequately consider alternative measures that could have been used in place of cash bail or no bail, we think that wasn't adequately considered.
And how long do you think that process will take?
Two months probably.
No, it's
hard to say.
It's hard to say, the appellate process. What I will say, done it before and succeeded. So that's what we're intending to do.
Which court do you go to? What's the name of it?
Is it
The California
second
Court of
district?
Appeals. All right, thank you very much.
Si hay algo que puede sacar adelante nuestro país y nuestra nación y la gran nación de toda la iglesia en el mundo, es el poder transformador de la palabra de Dios. No necesita usted este reconocimiento, pero es un honor para nosotros otorgárselo y nombrarlo hijo distinguidísimo de la ciudad de San Salvador. al gran apóstol masón Joaquín García.
Y tenga la seguridad, señor alcalde, señores diputados que hoy nos honran con su presencia, que tanto mi oración como la de todo este pueblo seguirá siendo en favor de ustedes. Creemos y estamos convencidos que el que ustedes dirijan este país también es por decisión de Dios, porque así nos lo dice la Escritura, que todas las autoridades que se han establecido por Dios han sido establecidas. Y deseamos que Dios los siga ayudando y que Dios siga dirigiendo bien sus pasos, porque creemos que todas las decisiones que ustedes tomen son siempre en favor de esta ciudad.
El reconocimiento se entrega debido al trabajo social que realiza la Iglesia Luz del Mundo, como el rescate de la juventud, prevención de adicciones y delincuencia. Al evento asistió la diputada Nidia Díaz y el diputado Damián Alegría del FMLN.